Welcome to Experimarketing, the podcast where we innovate, create, and appreciate. Powered by Mostly Automotive Marketing with Matt Wilson. Here's the host of Experimarketing, Chief Experimarketer, Colin Carasquillo.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, advertisers of all ages. It is I, Colin Carasquillo, host of Experimarketing, the podcast where we, of course, innovate, create, and appreciate new ways of marketing to generate opportunities for your business. Now, yes, this is an automotive show, but it could be utilized for any facet of any sort of marketing or advertising. Without further ado, let me bring in my co-host, Matt Wilson. There he is.
Hello, sir. How you doing?
Hello, Matt Wilson. How are you?
Good. Good, Colin. Thanks for having me on.
Extra sharp in your Nike hat. For those that are watching, for those that are listening, Matt, I think, are you sponsored by Nike at this point in time?
I should be.
You should be.
I should be, right?
Absolutely.
Nike, call me.
Nike, just advertise it. How about that? So without further ado, Matt, today we are talking about a topic that I think is exceptionally important for the dealer community, and that is a little something called digital retailing. Now, originally this episode was going to be called Call the DR, like call the doctor. I didn't know if it was going to be as impactful as this current title, but what we're doing is we're getting real about digital retailing today. So that's Experimarketing episode 17, getting real about digital retailing. Matt, what are your thoughts on digital retailing?
I think that it's kind of this broad term that sometimes causes confusion for dealers sometimes, because I think that digital retailing and a payment calculator are not the same thing, right?
Very good point. Very good point.
I think digital retailing is a specific thing that sometimes gets generalized when talked about. What was your question? Oh, I know what I think about digital retailing. Ready? Here's what I think about digital retailing. I think that, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think it's not just something you install on your website and then hope for the best. I think it has to be part of the culture at the store from the top down. And that's what I think about digital retailing. Yeah.
That's great. It sounds like, something that I would have said. It's not that like you or I have talked about this numerous times beforehand, but you do bring up a very good point. You said this on some of our previous episodes about digital retailing, which I do like. And I like that you brought it up again, that it's not just having a payment calculator, right? I know you have a very strong opinion on what digital retailing is, or maybe should be, and what it is not. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly that, yes, just having a payment calculator on your website is not digital retailing. Now, originally, you might have been able to get away with it saying like, oh, no, but it's okay. I have a payment calculator, a trade tool, and, I allow people to chat with me. All right, so you got three components, but how are those components all working together? And on this show, we're going to get just into that on how you can set your dealership up for digital retailing success. But before we get into that, I, of course, have to thank our lovely partners and sponsors over at Dealer Marketing Magazine. You can go find them at dealermarketing.com. And it just so happens our guest today, who I'm not going to divulge his name yet, but our guest today is actually an expert on the Dealer Marketing Magazine expert panel, which is a expertly curated, I should say, panel of 30 individuals in the automotive space. And I mean, it's individuals that do everything from advertising, dealership operations, insurance and protection, all different things. It's a great place to go to learn about anything automotive, stay up to date with anything automotive, and of course, hear from awesome peers in the space. And also, I'd like to switch gears then to another sponsor of ours, a new sponsor, Auto Lead Star. Now, Auto Lead Star, I'll plug their podcast as well. They have the Inside Auto podcast, which is another great podcast in the automotive space. I think, Matt, you've been on the show. I've been on the show. It's a really, really great time.
Love those guys.
Yes, they're really awesome. But Auto Lead Star not only has an awesome podcast, Auto Lead Star in general and what they do with their advertising technology, their platform, right? And I'll read this shamelessly, but essentially, and I agree, I will say our stores do use Auto Lead Star, and we've seen some great success with the Auto Lead Star platform. But changing the way dealers do marketing allowing you to market, sell, and service your cars as you would in the real world at scale online, right? Making one-to-one matches between shoppers and your inventory. And they use a whole bunch of different things with artificial intelligence and machine learning. I mean, I can geek out about it. You and I can geek out about it, but for a very long time, we're not going to do that. But what we are going to say is if you use the promo code POD50, that's POD50, POD50, you're going to get 50% off your first 3 months on the Auto Lead Star platform. Let me say that one more time. POD50, P-O-D, as in dog, 50 for 50% off your first 3 months on the Auto Lead Star platform. You can go to autoleadstar.com to find that out. All right, now, without further ado, let's jump right into it because we need to get real about digital retailing. Today, we are very honored and lucky to have the Director of Dealer Communications at CarGurus, none other than Jeremy Sacco. Let's bring him in. Jeremy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Really, really excited to have you on the show. I will say this, as we kind of scale out at Experimarketing, we get to talk with all these incredible people that it seems like there's more and more security that we kind of have to get through. So I know this had to go through a couple different iterations with your communications team and so on and so forth. So here we are.
It's not that bad. It's just PR. You know, they do their thing. Thanks, Brian.
That's right.
Shout out, Brian.
They got to do the background checks on us and make sure we're not talking nonsense or you're not coming on some show where it's just, hey, conspiracy theories about marketing. But no, we're not that. We like to give some nice, cold, hard, actionable insight and data. So before we get into that and this article that you wrote, Digital Retail, 4 Steps for Setting Your Dealership Up for Success, which of course is on dealermarketing.com. Tell us about yourself. What makes you you, Jeremy?
Sure. Well, give you a little bit of my background and tell you sort of why I'm in this space I am now, talking about digital retailing. I'm relatively new to auto. I'm going to fess that up right off the bat. I've been at CarGurus for about 4 years, and it's been really interesting. But some of the steps I've taken in my career before that gave me some background that's really relevant to this. One was my last role was at a mobile app marketing company, and at first blush, you're going to say, "What the hell does that have to do with selling cars?" The thing that I learned there, and that applies still today, is this idea that the impact that mobile is having on people's willingness to spend money online. And dropping like $3.99 on a hat for your Among Us character or your Simpsons character or whatever might not seem exactly the same as buying a car, but it's sort of breaking a barrier, and it has been for a decade now. So that sort of mobile first step into digital transacting, I think, is making a difference for people, and it has been for a while now. So that there's some relevance there. A little more relevant, my job before that was at a company called Buyer Zone, where I helped business people buy major purchases, things like phone systems and forklifts and security systems and air compressors, all kinds of stuff. Those purchases weren't being done online mostly. Purchases were still being completed in the real world, but the purchase process was going online. We saw that people were getting more done. They wanted to have more information before they got to the salesman. They wanted to know more about their options. And these were big ticket, long-term, complicated purchases like vehicles can be. So there's sort of some relevance there. So I've been sort of seeing this digital purchase trend for a long time. And now it's exciting to be on the automotive side of it. CarGurus has been a fantastic stop for me so far. It's been really interesting talking to so many dealers and learning about the challenges and the excitement around going digital. I guess other things that make me me. I live here outside Boston, where we got teased with some nice 70-degree spring weather on Friday, and it was 16 when I got up this morning. So that's March in New England. I got a couple of kids. Their Lego mess is behind me, so apologies about that. But they're off at school today, so they shouldn't be joining us. I don't think so.
Hey, listen, everyone's welcome on Experimarketing, and Matt and I feel your pain. We're all on the East Coast. I'm in New Jersey. Matt's in Connecticut. I went to school in Connecticut, but have a lot of friends from that, Boston, Massachusetts area. So we know, we get it. We got teased with the 70 degrees, and now here we are freezing our butts off again. But Jeremy, that's really awesome. And, I do want to say that absolutely your background, I mean, the fact that you had talked about mobile applications, but really everything in this day and age is going mobile first. So there's tons of relevance in terms of what you used to do and applying that to the automotive space. And I know you say, hey, you're relatively new in auto at 4 years, but it's the same thing. This is a space that's always changing. And, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter if you've been in the industry for 30 years or 4 years, right? It's always something new. So I think the beauty of what we do, of what you do, the fact that you're talking about it and, speaking about it so eloquently is that this is a space where you can always keep discovering. And it's always like it's your first day back in the space, right? And that's one of the most beautiful things here. So with that, though,
for some people, it's probably better to be 4 years than 30 years, right? It's going to be a little easier to jump forward if you don't have the decades of experience sort of setting you in your ways for some people.
That's right. No, you're absolutely correct. And, I think that's one of the things and wow, what a perfect segue. So that's one of the things though, that in this space, if we talk about falling into your old ways, right? I mean, I sit on the dealer side of things. Matt's on the agency side of things, but Matt used to be on the dealer side of things. And we know that one of our biggest opportunities for improvement on the dealer side of things is to break out of the, the same old, right? I think a lot of dealers say, hey, I've been in business for 30, 40 years and it's worked, right? I'm still around. Okay. But the fact of the matter is that, one, even prior to the COVID pandemic, things were changing. Obviously, things were becoming more digital first, more digital forward. We had this new digital retailing that was being thrown at us. And we had to say as dealers, how do we take this? How do we run with this? But it really became this challenge, if you will, that we had to understand and accept when COVID started about having to do business online, which is completely different than as dealers we would have thought we would have had to have done business, prior to this really happening. So with that, though, you talk about digital retailing, 4 steps for setting your dealership up for success in the article. Before we get into that, what is your definition of digital retailing? How do you define it? Because you see Matt says it's not just a payment calculator, where other dealers might say, yes, it is just a payment calculator. So go ahead, Jeremy, tell us with your insight, please.
Sure. I'm going to split hairs on that exact question in a second, but more broadly, a little bit of what it's not is sometimes useful. And there's a couple of things from our point of view at CarGurus. There's a couple of things that we want to think this is not what digital retailing is. And one is that it's a specific tool or technology that dealers have to buy. More specifically, that means it's not digital retail doesn't mean you have to have a buy now button next to every car. It doesn't mean you're a failure. You haven't done digital retail if you don't have that yet. The other thing that it's not is an instant path to success. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that if you're doing it, whether you're doing it well or not, it doesn't mean that digital retailing is going to be 100% success for your dealership. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of ways that you can get better at it. So there's sort of some factors there you got to keep in mind as to what it's not. Back to what it is. I guess one of the ways to think about it that's going to help dealers set up for success is it's really digital retail is anything you can do online to bridge the gap between pure research and finalizing a sale. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in that case, the way we think about it is it's really more like 80% process and commitment and 20% tools and technology. A lot of focus gets put on the tools and technology sometimes, and we want to say back off a little bit. Think about your commitment, think about your process, think about what your dealership is doing, and then get the tools to support it. So this goes into the splitting hairs bit. I would say, contrary to your introduction, that a payment calculator is a very small but a valid first step towards digital retail. It's helping somebody progress down that purchase path. It's one little step. It's not new. They've been around for a decade or more. It's not going to drive a lot of sales on its own. And you certainly can't declare success in digital retail just because you have a payment calculator. I get that. But that is an example of something that's starting that journey. And if that's your first step, I think that's valid. It's really about giving shoppers transparency and control. These are, buzzwords for a long time in the industry. We'll talk a lot about some research that our team did, our buyer insight report, where we surveyed about 3,000 buyers in the US. And one of the stats from that is that 78% of the shoppers in our most recent buyer insight report said that online tools and resources make them smarter shoppers. Mm-hmm. And of course, smarter shoppers, they're more confident, they're closer to signing a deal. So anything you can do to give them that confidence, give them that smarts, anything you can do digitally to move them down that path, that's how we're going to think about digital retail.
I'm really happy with that definition. I'll tell you, because, I think one of the biggest things on the dealer side of it is essentially what I like to call from click to brick, right? And I didn't come up with that, but the fact of the matter is you really do need to look at it from that perspective is exactly what you said. How do you bridge the gap between what occurs online, right? And that's going to be a unique customer journey. Every customer is not the same. It's not these linear customer journeys anymore, right? Everything's omni-channel, there's all these different paths to purchase that people will take. Essentially, the dealer needs to ensure that they're going to be providing the best possible experience or path with least friction in order to get that person to their brick and mortar dealership, or in some cases, yes, can complete the deal online, right? And have this real Carvana or Vroom-esque experience. But, I think for the most part that I would completely agree with you. And I've always been a big fan of the 80-20 rule where, yes, 80% of digital retailing is really the process that you have in place and how you're handling that digital retailing experience and that digital retailing customer versus the 20% of the technology, right? Which is okay, yes. And I would agree with in some instances about the payment calculators too, that, hey, sure, you have a portion of it on there. Is it the full suite? No, but if you can leverage that into the experience, or you're willing to have more tools that you might ultimately invest in or leverage that to be part of your digital retailing experience, then I can definitely see it being super successful. So you had mentioned 78% of shoppers obviously want to begin a portion of the process online or do their research online because it makes them feel more educated about it, which education is fantastic, right? I think dealers really need to embrace that. And they need to say, the more educated my shopper is, the better. Because what that's going to do is it's going to provide me, ultimately, if I don't fight back with any of those friction points, a real easy transaction. As long as I show the same information to the customer that they're seeing online, which as a dealer, you should have access to anyway, that should make your path to purchase really, really seamless for the customer and for you, ultimately, internally, the dealer. But 78% of people want that. I mean, just because 78% of people, want that, I mean, why else, though, do dealers or should dealers focus on this?
Sure. Just to clarify that a little bit.
Yeah, please.
It's a higher number that use online tools. It's like 93%, I think. But
wow,
78% of shoppers said that the online tools made them smarter. So they felt like those are the people who felt like they got something out of it, just to be clear.
Yeah, no, thank you.
But why focus on it? A few reasons. So as you said in the introduction too, that digital retailing, the interest in digital retailing in auto has been growing for years, right? It's not a brand new concept. It's just been a very, very slow growth. I think we found a figure that it was about 4% of of automotive revenue in the US, sales and parts, about 4% was e-commerce, and just before the pandemic last year. It's a pretty small number for something that's been technically possible for a long time. Then we all got stuck inside and the pandemic hit and interest in digital retail surged. This is, again, not news, right? We know this. We all experienced this as we were on our computers for a year. Right. This is reflected in our buyer insight report again. We had one question about openness to buying a car online, completing a purchase, which was 32% of buyers before the pandemic said they were open to the idea. Not that they were necessarily going to do it, but they were open to the idea. 32% before the pandemic, 60% post, or during, I guess.
Double. Really. I mean, double. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's for something that's been inching up, percentage points a year. It was a huge spike. That said, to go back to your click to brick idea, while at 60% are open to the idea, 63% of shoppers still prefer to complete their purchase in the store.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm open to it, but it's not necessarily my preference. It makes sense for a considerable purchase like that. And all that makes sense, right? As I said earlier, you're giving shoppers more control over the process. You still want to control the back end and your F&I products and all those components of a purchase that you can do digitally that are great components to start adding to digital retailing, where you don't have to have the end-to-end experience. You want to make that path easier. Again, like you said, people have different paths to purchase. A real common one is to do some of those early steps online and then complete in the store. Finance, back-end, trade-in evaluation, all those components we'll get into in a minute, but that's really something you can start doing almost right away. All of this isn't just good for the consumer. It sounds like we're saying this is great for shoppers. It's good for dealers, right? Increased efficiency, better, more sales without sacrificing your margins, building consumer trust and satisfaction. All of these great goals for any dealership really are just well suited for the digital retail experience.
I think the moral of the story. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead, Jeremy. Please finish.
Well, just one more thing. Just that as the pandemic is sort of winding down in a lot of ways, and vaccines are coming online, dealerships are open like usual. That doesn't mean this is going to go away. This interest in digital retail. This is not a one-time change. It might fall a little, but again, in the study, 88% of consumers said it's going to be quite a while before their shopping habits return to normal. So that's going to stick around.
No, I think, the moral of the story and what I was going to say, the main takeaway, I mean, you look at these figures that you guys presented in your buyer insights report, and essentially you have a number that went from 30% to 60% in terms of people that would be willing to engage with these online tools, or at least do a portion of their deal online, right? And essentially, when you look at that number, how it doubled, now 60%, all right? That is now the majority of people, where before it used to be the minority of people, it is now the majority of people. And I think ultimately when you look at that, so let's say the 30 to 60%, which you talked about, the 64%, which sure, still want to come into the dealership at some point to finalize the deal, that's now the majority. But if you take those two together, what that says to dealers is, okay, I need to be prepared to facilitate a majority of the deal online, but be prepared to provide that seamless experience to the customer when they do ultimately come into my brick and mortar dealership, because we're seeing that they still would like to come in and complete some sort of the purchase at the store. I think the challenge for dealers is they say this, Jeremy, they go, I'm either going to go 110% on one side, so brick and mortar, or I'm going to do 110% on the digital side. And they're not realizing, or they're not understanding the value in going 100%, which you can't, but 100% in both ends, and trying to build that great experience that connects the online to the actual physical brick and mortar. And then the last thing.
100% agree, Colin. It's absolutely right. That's something that we are on the exact same page when it comes to that idea, where you need to consider what the whole journey and what pieces you can carve out, not that it has to be 100%.
Right. And one of the things too, and you say, 80% of people, and once again, please correct me because there's a lot going on up in my head here, but 80% of people then say that at some point their purchase patterns might go back to a similar. Can you clarify that one more time?
88% said my shopping habits have changed as a result of the pandemic, and they're not likely to go back anytime soon.
Okay, so dealers, hello, wake up, right? You got 88% of people whose shopping habits have changed as a result of this pandemic, and they found out that what they can do online is so much easier than what they were originally able to do in store. And this is not just automotive. I mean, look at how all of these companies have exploded with, Grubhubs of the world and direct-to-consumer companies, and, Amazon having these stellar, sales months because people are home, like you said, and things are just getting delivered right to their doorsteps, utilizing Amazon Prime and all these different things.
Liquor stores.
Liquor stores. There you go, Matt. And the fact of the matter is that dealers need to understand that even though on those small consumer packaged goods, right, like the liquor store analogy there, example, but yes, even for cars, that can happen too. And that is what should influence dealers' willingness and acceptance of digital retailing and willingness to change. Matt, what were you going to say about liquor stores?
I was going to say, so the ones near me they changed their process, launched a new website, and started delivery service. Why would I go back to going there after it's okay to go there anymore? It's way more convenient to have it delivered to your house. Like, why would I make a stop to go back in and stand in line? They literally bring it to your door. I need booze. They show up. I mean, like why go back? They're not going to go turn around and get rid of their website and stop offering that service. Like it's here to stay.
Well, I think the other thing that this opens up too, which, on some of the previous episodes of Experimarketing, we talk about customer experience, and we talk about that being the next competitive battleground, right? So ultimately, though, your digital retailing process and the experience that you can provide to individuals should be part of that customer experience, right? And bolstering everything, because now you're providing the customer with the tools that they actually want. You're providing them with a seamless experience from online to offline. It's only going to enhance their overall customer experience, which in turn, dealers will enhance your CSI. Everyone loves their customer satisfaction. And that's how dealers will ultimately win in 2021 and beyond. So without further ado, Jeremy, because this is what people have been waiting for. We talked about digital retailing. We now know what that is. We now know why we should utilize digital retailing. What are the steps to success? How as a dealer do I take this and I run with it?
Well, there's a few things that I outlined in the article. I think sticking with the theme of process and commitment is 80% of the battle. The first one we want to talk about is getting buy-in from your entire dealership, all your staff. You need to make sure that the whole store is bought in top to bottom on whatever degree of digital retail you've decided to tackle. You need to lead by example. If you're the GM, if you are the internet manager that's implementing this, whatever your role is, if you are the champion of digital retail in your store, you need to be leading by example and making that the most important talking point every day, making that what you talk about, what you emphasize, what you reward. Education is a part of that. Specific training sessions, ride-alongs, whatever you can do to sort of call out the best practices and getting your staff more comfortable with it. Selling it as this makes your job easier, Mr. Sales Rep. A little self-interest goes a long way. So if that rep thinks he's going to hit his number a little faster because he's using DR to his advantage, then fantastic.
Right.
And recognizing wins, same old, right? It's a shout out, it's a lunch, it's a small spiff, whatever it is to sort of reward the people who are doing this well at your dealership. It's going to require that sort of commitment from everybody to really, really make it work. Again, the process is so important. Following through is so important. You're going to need to go out of your way to make sure that the staff is really digging in and taking digital retailing seriously as you roll it out at your dealership.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate that that's just super important because, from the dealer side, and this is why I kind of love the dichotomy that we have here, right? So we obviously speak with you, the expert on the expert panel, but, Matt on the agency side, myself on the dealer side. That is one of the biggest things that I've seen as an opportunity for improvement within our own dealership organization is the process and the buy-in from the management team or the leadership team, and making sure that that process is then disseminated out to all of the proper channels, whether it's just the sales side or both sales and service, depending on how far you want to get into this DR process, right? And for us, that is something that we still work on, even though we have digital retailing tools. It's that finding that sweet spot between getting our salespeople completely on board, holding them accountable, but also that's on us to make sure that we're providing them the best process, that we are engaging them, that we're educating them, that we're training them. And I just think that that's super, super important, because what we'd find out is if you go into this without a plan of attack, you're probably better off not going into it. And I would absolutely state that, and state that confidently, that dealers, for those of you that have digital retailing and want to reevaluate your process, or for those that are looking to get into digital retailing, really find a plan of attack, or put a plan of attack in place before you say, let's just put the tools live on our website, right? I mean, would you agree with that, Jeremy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that, thanks for the transition. That feeds right into the next concept, which is this idea of sort of mastering one component first.
Sure.
Right? It's going to be focused. It's the idea of getting one piece right. And again, you get everybody's commitment for this one piece. And step one and step two is let's focus on one, right? It's not all or nothing, like you said earlier. So if it's finance, if it's trade-in evaluation, if it's service even, then focus on that aspect of your purchase journey and get that right. Finance is really a great example. I think shoppers today, again, in our survey, are really eager to move that process online. When we look at the dealership experience, and you sort of rank all the components from most to least popular, financing is always down the bottom, right? That's one of buyers' least favorite things to do at the dealership. So our numbers said 52% of shoppers today prefer doing financing online. Not just are willing to, more than half already say they would rather just get that done online, as opposed to only 41% said they would rather complete the purchase online. So that's a great place to start. There's certainly ways to do it. It makes some dealers nervous. They say, I don't want to lose my back end on the financing. You're not going to. Work with the vendor who's going to let you keep that. Get pre-approvals for vendors that you've already got arrangements with, and you can protect that. You can protect those F&I products, build that into the process as well. The other piece that makes me think of is your comment about it being seamless. This is where that becomes a real challenge. If you're only doing one part of the whole process digitally, then you need to make damn sure that handoff from digital to in-store is as seamless as possible. Nothing is going to piss off a consumer more if they walk in, they say, hey, I did this pre-approval online, I'm ready to buy my car, and the sales guy goes, what? I don't have this. Let's start over. That person's leaving, right? They're out of there.
Right.
So, that's the kind of thing where you need to really make sure that you've got that clean bridge between the digital and the physical.
No, I think that's super, super important. And I think that's one of those things where, even like you said, so you're mastering the one component, or you're saying, hey, let's focus on this one component. But then that brings up the other side of it, which, like you said, you need to make sure then that if you're going to allow people to do their financing or enable people to do their financing online, that you have a process in place for when the person does ultimately show up at the dealership, that financing is already taken care of. Now, I understand a person, ultimately with digital retailing, you're trying to save time for this individual at the dealership, right? You want them to spend less time there. That's the biggest selling point, I would say. You can complete your deal or build most of your deal out online in the comfort of your own home. And what that's going to do is save you time at the dealership. Now, I would think that people don't want to go into financing, or it's one of the least popular things to do at the dealership because, hey, you just grinded it out for an hour or two with the salesperson, and now you're ready to get the heck out of there. And then they say, hey, you got to go sit in the box. And next thing you know, you got to sit with the finance people, and you're like, oh my God, pulling out your hair. So I could see that. And I think, Jeremy, that's a really great point, though, that not only does the data show that that's what people want, but it also can show that, hey, as dealers, you're listening to what the public is interested in and what the public wants, which also puts you in a good light. And if you have that process in place about the financing, the F&I, and you allow them to do it online, well, then go ahead and scream that from the rooftops that, hey, everyone can do their F&I online. It's going to save you time at the dealership. We'll make sure we have this seamless experience once you get there. And it all just works together, and it works together beautifully. So with that, let's say I have, I'm going to let my dealers, my salespeople, my F&I people, or I'll let our customers, our potential customers, do their financing online. What happens? How do I kind of map a success? How do I map that for success? What does that look like?
Well, it looks like you got to have a map.
What do you mean I need a map?
You got to know where you're going with this, right? What are your goals? And whether that's a percentage of vehicles sold or a percentage of financing applications that come in, you want to come up with some sort of goal that's realistic. You don't want to be crazy aggressive. Maybe it's small. Maybe it's, I want, of my total sales this year, I want, I don't know, off the top of my head, 10% of them to come in digitally with a completed finance application that I close that finance with. Or I want to sell 5% of my cars from first contact all the way up until final paperwork online, whatever, depending on your goals for how much of the digital process you're doing. Set those goals so you have something to aim for. That's going to let you get that commitment. You're going to be able to rally the troops and get them pumped up to go for that, to hit that target every month or over the course of the year. You also want to map out, if you're doing this component by component approach, okay, so you're starting with component A, say you're starting with financing, is the example we keep using.
Yeah.
So you're putting that in place this week. What's next? Set that goal now. Okay, is it by the end of the year I want to have a buy now button? Is it I want to have fully digital service appointments booking by the end of Q3? Whatever it is, getting those all in. It's not an all or nothing, but you should have you need to be planning beyond the current step so you can keep moving forward. And then to go with that though, you also need to be measuring, right? Throughout the whole process, measuring not just how many sales did I get directly from the website or how many finance applications did I get, but what's your margin on digitally sold cars versus other cars? Are you maintaining that? Make sure you're tracking that, or your back end take on your add-on products. What kinds of cars sell digitally versus those that don't? So you can know where to focus, or what kinds of marketing drive the most digital sales versus drive the most in-person sales. So looking at those kind of metrics with that digital physical split is going to give you the insight you need to really keep mapping it forward as you add more digital products going forward.
No, and I think that that's exceptionally important. And one of the things that I just want to unpack a little further or just touch back on is the fact of the matter that, like you keep saying, this is not an all or nothing thing. Okay. And I think that's really important for us to talk to the dealer community about, because I think what happens is for dealers, and God bless them, when they want to do something, I mean, they jump in head first, right? And they go, like they have one speed and it's go. And so then you either have dealers that just say, no, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and wait this one out. Or you have the dealers that say, I'm all in. And so if you're one of those dealers that, whether you want to, kind of test the waters, or if you're going all in, I think it's exceptionally important to understand that if you're going to go all in with that plan in place, go all in following these steps that Jeremy lays out in this article, where you're going to master one component first. You're still planning for the future on how you're going to build upon that, but you need that mastery. Right? What I'll come back to, or what I'll say is, you can be a jack of all trades and a master of none. What we want you to do is master one before going on to the next one. I mean, right, Jeremy? Is that what I'm getting out of this?
Yes, 100%. But you can be a master of seeing the future, right, so you know where you're going. You can at least have to have that plan in place. But yeah, you're not going to get it all 100% right off the bat. And that's, again, to your point, maybe that's a message that doesn't sit well with all dealers who think they're going to do everything right all the time. You're not. This is new stuff. It's different. It's evolving quickly. And your ability to measure how it's going before you decide exactly what the next step is going to be really important.
I think maybe that's what we all needed to hear. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, Jeremy, when you say that it's okay. Like, it's okay that you don't get everything right, dealer. It's okay. And I think that that's super important because, like you said, this is changing. I mean, what seems daily, it's changing all the time. And for us to, one, adopt it as quickly as we have because of COVID, and now keeping up with all of these different changes. It's okay, dealers, if you do one part and then you say, all right, I'm comfortable with how we're doing this. Let's move on to the next part. So I think that that's really beautiful, and that's good that you said that. So now I did that. You taught me all the different KPIs and key performance indicators and kind of goals and metrics that I'm looking at to take my operations to the next level. I mean, I understand that part of it is the process. Obviously, that's the biggest part of it. So we said 80% is the process, 20% is the tool. Well, that's 100%. I think one of the things that's missing, and maybe we'll change that up because, like I said, I'm a big 80-20 fan. I think a small portion of it, maybe it's 10% or maybe it's 5%, actually needs to be the marketing or messaging around the actual process and tools. So essentially, let's say I change it to 80, 15, and maybe 5. So essentially the 5% becomes marketing, where now you are educating your customers that you have this great process in place, that you've listened to them, that you have these tools that will enable them to start their deal online or facilitate a portion of the deal online. What type of content should dealers be putting out there then, Jeremy? How do we get the message out there?
Sure, I like updating the 80-20 rule there to include that's a really good point. I might have to rethink my messaging on that. I guess one of the things I would start by thinking about the user experience, not just pure content. And what I mean by that is, as we talk about sort of compartmentalizing and providing different chunks of the purchase journey digitally, a couple of things come to mind. One is you want to make sure you're providing multiple entry points. So let a consumer get into the digital path whenever they're comfortable with it. Maybe they stop by the dealership just to sort of get a feel for what the car is like first, and then they're going to go do some digital stuff. Maybe they're going to come onto your website and they already have their financing lined up. Great. Make it easy for them to just choose just the pieces that they want out of the digital path. And related to that, I would think about it as don't segregate your digital path away. It's kind of an offshoot of the same idea, but don't segregate the digital purchase path from the online purchase path, right? You want to normalize it. It's just something else as they're going through your website. Right. They can start doing some of those components online. It's just the normal next step. Next, get a value on your trade-in. Oh yeah, that is what I would do next, but I'm just going to do it online instead of doing it by calling up the dealer or bringing my car in. Or I'm going to make an appointment to see that car. Great, now you're doing that digitally. Sort of normalizing those next steps as digital, and as opposed to trying to steer people to separate areas of the site or down separate funnels. Another type of content I would say is important right now for digital is customer reviews, testimonials, quotes. Getting your buyers who have gone through this process and done some of it online. I know this is already important. I know the Google reviews are already important. I know this is something that dealers focus on a lot, but especially for those digital buyers, if you can get them to say, man, it was so great to get my financing done online, and then I just walked in and signed the paperwork. Or to sort of give you those quotes. That's a real powerful when we're talking about something that's not totally accepted by all consumers yet.
Right.
But that kind of customer validation is going to be real important. I would also say that in addition to not segregating and providing multiple entry points into the digital path, provide an exit path. So whenever somebody gets to the point where they're like, I don't know if I want to do this online, you want to make sure that your user experience is providing a chat, email, text, phone call, whatever, a way out of the digital realm and into the I want to talk to somebody. You want to make sure that's part of the experience as well. So all of that it's mostly user experience focused, I guess, except for the idea about customer quotes. But this is a really important way to get that message out. I think on an advertising point of view, marketing point of view, you want to make sure that you are going more specific in your marketing and hitting those people with messages that say online financing, complete online. Run specific campaigns for that. So you can measure, see how they do. Right? What kind of shoppers do those bring in? We could talk about millennials in particular and like they're changing shopping habits. Those millennials have money now. They're more likely to buy luxury cars. They're more likely to buy new cars. And they're more likely to be online purchasers at this point. So that's a group that you might succeed really well with. So that sort of targeting and using that digital specific message when you can is probably also a really important part of getting this digital commitment to pay out.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the millennial generation, but let's look at it from a marketing perspective. You could even start focusing on Gen Z now, because I think the youngest Gen Zs, or not youngest, I should say the oldest Gen Zs, I believe are 22 or 23 years of age at this point. And, you know, you might start getting some disposable income from your first job, graduating college, whatever it may be, or hey, mommy and daddy might take care of you a little bit. Obviously, you have some input into that purchase decision. But I think one of the biggest things that you talk about, I completely agree with you about the user experience and making sure that you're providing an optimal or optimized user experience for your customer. I also agree with you in terms of the advertising messaging. But the most important thing that I want to touch on is when you look at those audiences like the millennial generation or Gen Z, look at the platforms that those people are on, right? So for example, millennial generation, real heavy usage in Instagram, you know, they're still on Facebook. They absolutely all do have Facebook. So I'm a millennial myself. So my top two are Instagram and Facebook. And, you know, I'll Snapchat occasionally, but it's still a foreign land. I don't really go into Snapchat world. But then you look at Gen Z, and Gen Z's massive on Snapchat and TikTok and all these different areas that as a dealer, if you're going to launch these tools or this process, it might be very beneficial for you, and it won't cost a lot. I will say that, to promote the actual fact that you do have this process or these tools in place on those platforms, and even your existing channels that are organic, right, or unpaid. So your Facebook page, I mean, dealers, if you don't have a Facebook page, shame on you. You need to get one today, but have a Facebook page. Yeah, right. Look at Matt over there.
Who doesn't have one?
I don't know. I don't know. Some might not.
I was say the same thing, but I didn't want to insult anybody.
Yeah, some might not. But the fact of the matter is, if you have your Facebook page, your Twitter account, your Instagram, at least start putting content out there that promotes that you have this, because this is ultimately what is going to set your dealership apart as we move forward in the latter half of 2021 and beyond that. So we talk about beyond, and this is always something fun I love doing with our guests. So Jeremy, I'm going to ask you, I'm just going to have to get a real crystal ball, but I have my little globe here. So Jeremy, let me pretend this is a crystal ball. Oh, wise Jeremy. Where do you see digital retailing going in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What do you see happening in the realm of digital retailing?
You don't need a crystal ball, right? It's not a trend that the change is going to continue. The rate of adoption may slow a little bit, right? It's not going to keep accelerating like we saw in the pandemic, but it's going to continue growing. Especially as millennials and younger millennials who are more digitally native, and especially Gen Z, when, as you said, when we start getting into them becoming a more significant group of car buyers, they are just ready for it. They're not going to have to think twice. Honestly, if you think about, I'm just thinking about what you said about, you know, TikTok and Snapchat Snapchat advertising, specific messages about, hey, you can do this digitally, almost might be less impactful there, because they're just going to assume that they can. Right. Digital purchases is just the assumption.
Very good point.
That generation. The millennials, yeah, you gotta talk to them still. But so as those groups, you know, as the older generations become less impactful, and as those groups become more, yeah, the trend is going to continue. I think the fact of digital retailing is going to become less of a decision or less of a separate thing. It's just going to be how you buy a car, right? Like, it's not going to be something you decide, I'm going to buy a car digitally. That's just going to be the assumption. And yeah, you might still go to a dealership and do a test drive. That's going to happen, especially in used car, or especially in situations where people are buying a new make or model for the first time. And they want to just see how it feels on their butt. Like, that's a fact of buying a car. So that's still going to happen to some degree. But more and more of the process being digital is just going to be the assumption. It's going to become less noteworthy. It's just going to be the default on how you do it. I don't have a percentage for you in 10 years. I think it's going to be.
Why not, Jeremy?
Mike, because you have the crystal ball. See, I don't have.
Oh, okay. Touche.
The continued adoption, I think it's going to continue to grow like crazy. I think that the customer acceptance hurdle was the big one, and that's been demolished by the pandemic to a large degree. And now it's just getting dealers on board. And I think the more dealers that commit and that really that make a plan and get it done, the more people see their friends and neighbors and families buy a car, at least to some degree, online. I think the more it's just going to take off.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. Here's one more fun one for you. I've just thought of this, but I've been pre-COVID. Obviously, we represent numerous brands over here at the Nielsen Automotive Group, but essentially going to different digital conferences that some of these different manufacturers host, right? Just on a monthly basis, kind of giving you the lay of the land, so on and so forth. I always have to ask someone from Google about whether or not Google is going to start as a user, right? It's more of a user experience now on Google. It used to be about giving information. Now it's about providing answers and, providing that user experience. So no one from Google can answer my question. They keep dodging me. So I'm going to ask you instead, because you're with CarGurus. I know it's not Google, sorry, but what do you think, Jeremy, is going to happen? You think Google will ultimately start giving preference to dealer websites that have these digital retailing tools because it's essentially making the customer experience better? See what I'm saying there?
I do see what you're saying. And certainly Google pays a lot of attention to customer experience and customer interaction with the site, right? If the people that they send to your site stay there for half an hour because they're filling out their forms, they're getting their purchase done, that's a really powerful signal to Google that site is meeting the customer need. It would not surprise me at all if that starts to contribute to sites ranking and sites ranking higher in search results. Makes a lot of sense to me. But
there you go. Awesome. I got another one that has my theory that believes it. So Jeremy, we really, really appreciate it. Now, obviously with CarGurus, we of course need to let you guys talk. So you have your own digital retailing platform now, which why don't you just tell us a little bit about it? Because I think one of the coolest things, and originally dealers usually wage war with the third-party providers, but they need to be vendor partners of ours, okay? I think one of the coolest things that has happened with vendor partners, and for example, companies like CarGurus, is they have understood what the customer wants in terms of these digital retailing tools and this digital retailing experience. So now you're enabling customers to essentially, build out, right, payments online and things like that. Tell us a little bit about the product and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, this is really one of our main focuses these days, is trying to build a digital experience for consumers and dealers.
Right.
Which, that's our role. Like you say, we get in the crossfire sometimes, but we need to address both sides of that marketplace.
Absolutely.
So what we're doing now is, on the consumer side, it's called Finance in Advance, and it lets consumers get pre-approvals. We tie those pre-approvals to lenders that the dealers already work with. So they still get their traditional share of that financing deal if it closes. And it's mainly about providing a seamless experience for the consumer. Again, making that easier for them to walk in there, making it easier for the dealer to keep that relationship and get those deals closed. We're also building out a digital retail product, still in beta testing, but that's going to provide more of the process. And we've been talking about this at some of our events lately. I can't give you a big reveal, but basically it is. Oh, sorry, I wasn't cleared for that. But providing more of that process online, providing a lead that gives financing information, that gives trade-in information, that gives appointment requests, service and other add-on products, getting those built into the purchase process on the consumer side. So when the dealer gets that lead, it's got all of that built out and it's ready to go.
Right.
This is where it's going. And this is something where, the way we're approaching it fits in with what we've said, where you can take it a little bit at a time. You don't have to do everything at once, but you're building towards that future state where more of it gets done online.
Do we have a ETA on when dealers can look forward to this? Is that something you can tell us maybe?
We should have some news coming out in the next month or two. That's going to give us.
All right. Awesome. Well, we are looking forward to it. And obviously, I'm sure, can people find out more about the finance product that you have just on cargurus.com? Is that the place to go? Or
dealercenter.cargurus.com,
Dealer Center. Okay.
A dealer-facing website. So come on there. There's lots of information there. Our buyer insight report is featured pretty prominently on there. If you want to get some more details about Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, about how
all the gens.
all of them. As well as information about our financing product and all kinds of great information. So
can you tell us that one more time? Because Matt can actually put it on the screen. So it's Dealer Center. One more time for us.
Yeah, dealercenter.cargurus.com.
Dealercenter.cargurus.com. Matt, can you throw that up there real quick? Look at that. Love it like magic. All right, guys, dealercenter.cargurus.com. As Jeremy had stated, you can check out the buyer insight report, which he had referenced numerous times throughout the podcast today, which was awesome. Really great information. You can learn more about their upcoming products as well as their existing financing product, and check it out. If you're looking for a process that has a little bit of digital retailing in it, this could be the one for you. There's a lot of tools out there. Dealers, the only way that you're going to be able to find out whether or not it's going to work for you is to put that process in place and then give it a try, right? And master one component and then move on and set your sights higher and higher and higher. So with that, Jeremy, thank you so very much for all of your insight and knowledge today. And of course, thank you for writing this great article for Dealer Marketing and for being an expert panelist. We really appreciate it. We hope to have you on in the future.
You're welcome, and thank you so much. This was really, really fun. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Matt. Really, really good time.
All right, Jeremy. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Wow. I mean, this is one of those things, digital retailing. I don't know. I might want to become like an advocate that just screams digital retailing. What do you think?
I think, do you have, I want to bring back something you mentioned before. Do you have a name? Like, does your group have a name for?
Branded?
Yeah.
Okay, we did, and I say we did because the general manager wasn't a fan of it. I find myself coming up with a lot of these things. We called it the Fast Pass, okay? It was the Nielsen Automotive Group Fast Pass. A lot of people said, what are you, at Disney World? You're going to get on a ride quicker?
Oh, right, Fast Pass.
I said, all right, guys, give me a break. So here's our new thing, right? But basically the whole idea behind this, and we still need to come out with whatever our digital retailing tool is going to be called, but the whole idea is online or in store at the Nielsen Automotive Group will always do more.
I like it.
Really, what that means, though, I mean, you unpack the more, it comes down to obviously the ability to have online or digital retailing, right? Vehicle delivery. All right. We're talking about, real-time communication via chat, right? So it's no more robo-advisors. It's all live advisors. We obviously, as an automotive group, we have a large selection of inventory. We have more vendor partnerships. So it's a package that we just need to figure out how I'm going to wrap it up and put a bow on it and send it out to the ether.
We have a group in Connecticut that I thought did a really good job really early on. Well, and the name is not like anything special. It's just the Executive Group Express Store, because that's the name of the group. They got like 15 stores, 10 stores in Connecticut. But they did a really good job of being like on all their brand, on all their websites, here's what it's called. And like, here's the steps. Like you can do this, you can do this, or you can do this. Yep. And they like laid it out. It wasn't kind of like, these kind of random CTAs that aren't connected, like they like put it all together really fast. They might have already been in the process before the pandemic hit. I thought they did a really good job. And I think that goes into it, is to like have consumer confidence.
Yeah.
That, this is kind of a cool thing as opposed to kind of piecemeal.
Well, it's professionally done. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I think I want to add in either that 5% or I might want to make it more and make it 10%. But I do think that there's a whole bunch that has to go behind the marketing and the actual branding of the product for people to ultimately both externally and internally buy into the digital retailing process and the tools. So Matt, thank you so very much for your wisdom. You sit there just so stoic. And I know you just listen, which is so fantastic. So I really appreciate you, as always, my man. You ever watch Don Lemon? You watch Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo by any chance, CNN?
I have not.
Anyway, so Don Lemon, Chris Cuomo, it doesn't matter what channels they represent, whatever their political affiliation is, but they always say, they talk before their segments, and they always go, all right, man, you have a great segment. I love you, brother. And then he goes, I love you too, brother. And so that's how I feel. I feel like I love you, brother. All right.
I love it.
I'll see you later. Play us out, everyone. To stay in touch, you can do subscribe, LinkedIn, Facebook, all there. We'll see you guys next time on Experimarketing. Thank you.